Shalom. Call hello, Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Rakaha, Kodash. Double honors into the apostles, double honors into the elder bishops. Salutations to all my fellow laborers doing this work in truth and sincerity, risking their lives and their freedom to do so now more so than ever. To the scattered elect that is scattered around the four corners of the earth, that be like unto the speckled bird, the Israelite foreigners among the heathen that look like those heathen. This is not a black thing. And to the few Akwaf that are listening and learning, to you, I say Shalom. This is your brother Malcolm from the branch of the Great Millstone here in Chicago, coming at you another lesson in truth. And this is going to be a response to number 213, GC, number 213, or the Biblical Rumble Room. White American man, African Americans are the true Israelites of the Bible, and gotta narrow it down. Primarily the ones who came over here on the slave ships, and the natives that were here. He's gonna mention them that were here already in the Americas prior to Columbus sailing, which fulfilled the prophecy of Azareth, which are the northern kingdom. And you have to understand, too, there was an act that happened in Virginia in 1682. And that act was that the so-called African-American slave and the so-called Native American were both called Negroes and were considered the same race. And the reason that was done is because they are. All right. Different hair textures and some facial features because of being scattered among different people. The Southern Kingdom was, although they were scattered among all people, but the big bulk of them was scattered among the Hamites, the so-called Africans. All right, and then the Northern Kingdom, when you look at the map of Israel, ancient Israel, Ammon and Moab are right next door to Samaria, to the Northern Kingdom, and they intermingled and made children with a lot of them. So that's why they would have what you call so-called Asian features and different textures of hair. And then they were in the Assyrian captivity among Ishmael and Elamites and things of that nature. So after 2,000 years of separation, they're not going to look the same, even though in some characteristics they still have physically, and definitely their behavior, their social orders were definitely very, very similar, and through the spirit, because he's going to speak on that. So I just thought I'd mention it. But first scripture I want to get before I open up and play his video and then correct, because he says a lot of things right, but he says a lot of things wrong. And first of all, he's saying Yahshua or Yahuwah or whatever. The name is Yahweh and Yahweh Shai. All right, point blank, period. Those are the names. Anyone not using that name is either they're ignorant of the fact or they're purposely misleading, because that's what Esau does. Because they're starting to admit the truth, because the truth is just stands on its own. All right, all the lies that they put up, people like Vocab Malone and Apologists and Christianity, well, it can't hold up to the truth. It just can't, because it doesn't match up. But one of the ways that you know that you have the truth is when your precepts match up, which is something that the church has never used that phrase to tell the Hebrew Israelites. Now all of a sudden they're talking about precepts. All right. All of a sudden. But this is Isaiah 29:13. It says, "Wherefore the Lord said, for as much as this people draw near me with their mouth and their lips do honor me, but have removed their heart far from me. And the fear toward me is taught by the precept of men." So they go, by the precept of men, which doesn't match up. Because Isaiah 28:13, and 10 also tells you, it says, "But the word of Yahweh was unto them precept upon precept, line upon line, here a little and there a little, they might go and fall backward and be broken and snared and taken." All right. So precept upon precept, meaning, you know, you're going to jump from one prophet in one book, then you're going to go to another prophet in another book, and then to another prophet in another book, and another prophet in another book, because what they're saying is matching up. It links up. That's what a precept is. And the precept of men, well, they don't have precepts. They'll just say something and make it a doctrine, and then they have no precepts to back it up. And I believe it's in Psalms 104 and 19. Let me see if I can find it real quick. I believe it's in Psalms 104 and 19. When King David tells you, Salakia, when King David tells you that on 119 and 104, I believe. Yep. Let me go ahead and bookmark that. It says, through thy precepts I get understanding, therefore I hate every false way. That's how we get around the false ways and the false sayings, because the precepts don't match up. So anything that you say has to have precepts. So through precepts, I'm going to correct his wrongs. All right. Applaud what he said right, which is, you know, a good portion of it, most of it. But I'm going to correct what he says wrong, because they try to include the Gentiles into this gospel. All right. And that's the one thing that they're having a hard time with. Their start is getting to the point where you can't deny the fact that the so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans are the Israelites. To deny it just shows, you know, just shows your own hate, your own ignorance, your willful, disingenuous being, because you're purposely not looking at the evidences or the scriptures. All right. But so they're starting to admit it, but what they're starting to do, what they're saying though, is they're trying to include themselves in there and not acknowledging that there are two sets of Gentiles, which is very important. It's very important, because that's when the Bible actually begins to open up to you and you begin to understand, all right, that there are two sets of Gentiles. There are one Gentiles, which are the natural nations. All right, and then there were the Israelite foreigners, or the scattered Israelites who became Gentiles because they were scattered. All right, they were following the waves of the nations that they were scattered to. In some cases, they completely forgot or lost their heritage, or some of them just cleaved on to the heathen that were round about. Either way, they were still by blood, by race, Israelites. All right. And when those type of Israelites began to wake up, all right, it was a problem with the Israelites, or to come back, it was a problem with the Israelites who never turned away from the heritage. That is what was going on in the book of Acts. That's what Paul was dealing with. All right. So let's let him speak. This video is about, you know, 6 minutes and 40 seconds long. I'm probably gonna let him speak for about 5 minutes, and then I'll come in and correct him, because he starts going off. So here we go.
Hey, Daryl, just wanted to leave my testimony for you as a Gentile believer in Yeshua HaMashiach, that I came to the understanding that...
Now let me say it now. It's Yahushua HaMashiach. All right. Now, the fact that he believes, all right, because you have to understand that Israelites were scattered among the Edomites as well. There are a lot of Edom people that you would look at, where you would think or call an Edomite because of their appearance, that are not. They're of another nation, whether it be Moab, Ammon, or whatever. But there are lots of Israelites that are scattered among so-called white people. Too many to count, just like it's the other way around. All right. There are a lot of melanated Edomites. The Edomites made lots of babies with Israelite women. All right. Against their will and willingly. Especially those of lately. All right. So just because you come out melanated with sardine stone type skin, jasper stone type skin, all right, with woolly hair, doesn't mean that you're a Negro. So this is not a black thing. This is an Israelite thing. Keep that in mind. All right. The Israelites are scattered among all people. That's why it's going to take the angels, all right, to gather them up out of the nations where they were scattered to, because we all don't look like Wesley Snipes and, you know, and Shaquille O'Neal anymore. All right.
The descendants of the transatlantic slave trade, and probably some indigenous African Americans here that were here beforehand, I think might be some of the lost tribes of Israel who were here when Columbus got here. That understanding that you guys are.
Columbus' name was Cristobal Colon. That was his real name. And Cristobal Colon, aka Christopher Columbus, sailed with 5 Hebrew interpreters. So the whole lie about he was trying to find a short route to India and was calling them Indians, that's the fabricated history that they propagated to cover up the truth that they knew. He came looking for Hebrews and he found them, which is why he brought Hebrew interpreters. Facts. Undeniable historical fact, is not theory.
The true Hebrew Israelites of the Bible that people around the world understand as descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. My testimony is about 3 years ago in December, I was reading the book of Revelation. As you know, it's the only book in the Bible that promises a blessing to those who read it, and it turned out to be true for me. I was in chapter 4 and verse 3.
The blessed is he who readeth is the Israelite that has understanding. All right. So this guy is lacking understanding. All right. He has, what's that scripture? An unction, but not unto righteousness. So he might be an Israelite, but he doesn't have understanding. Not totally.
3, and he that sat on the throne was to look like a jasper and sardine stone, and there was a rainbow around the throne, in the sight like unto an emerald. When I saw jasper and sardine stone, I looked those stones up, and the color of them was basically like a black man's skin.
So let's help you out here. There it is. Revelation 4, 2, and 3, which is what he read. All right. And when you look at the average so-called black person, they're either a little bit darker or a little bit lighter than that, or a mixture of the two. That's clearly someone that is not in, with that brownish red. That's where you get your ruddy from. Brown being first, that brownish red, because both, there it is. Behold, the throne was set in heaven, and one that sat on the throne he had set was to look like a jasper and a sardine stone. So when you mix those two together, it said jasper and sardine. You're getting something that's brown. It's dark, reddish brown, medium reddish, a brownish red, I should say. Maroon, a brownish red. All right. Both are brown. All right. And this one has more red in it. All right. There it is.
And then I turned back thinking of what Revelation 13 and 14, 1, 13 and 14 say. His head and hair were like wool. Of course, we know what African Americans' hair is like. It's like wool.
Now, let's correct that. At this point, he should just be calling them Israelites, because he knows that they came over from Africa, that they were refugees in Africa. They weren't from there. All right. They fled Roman persecution, fled down into Africa, all along the Niger River, and ended up occupying most of Western Africa and some parts of Northern Africa. All right. They fled there to blend in with the other Hamites, because the Hamites are also a melanated people with woolly hair. And at first look, you could easily mistake an Israelite for a Hamite. All right. Both are brown skin. All right. but one is the seed of Shem and the other one is the seed of Ham. All right. Remember, Moses hid among them. Moses grew up in the house of Pharaoh. All right. I was just watching, and Lord's will, I'm going to do a lesson on that. I still plan to do a lesson on Kwame and those of us who are about to die. The character Kwame. All right. When he talks about when the pharaohs were black, the black pharaohs. How did the pharaohs become not black anymore? Well, Esau Edom took over the Ptolemies because Alexander set Ptolemy up. Alexander conquered. All right. And so they'll show you white pharaohs from the time of when they conquered and took over and not before that. And so Kwame speaks about that in that show, those of us who are about to die. All right. And then there's another thing too with the queen of the Judeans, professing her Idumean or her Edomite heritage, that her grandfather was Herod. All right. Proving that John Hyrcanus had taken a bunch of Edomites that were who brought in the customs of wearing hats, because the Israelites didn't do that. So they show you all this. They really messed up. All right. They went too accurate in the history and cut themselves. All right. So that's, plan on getting on that lesson, but it all fits into what we're talking about right now.
White as snow, his eyes were as a flame of fire, and his feet were like unto fine brass, as if it had been burned in a furnace. And so obviously we know what color that is. So that's when I realized that Jesus Christ was a black man. But I didn't put two and two together about his descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, who the entire Old Testament and the New Testament, and Jesus speaks about it in Luke 21:24, that there's going to be a time period where the Gentiles take over, and at the end times, the Hebrew Israelites are going to wake up. They're going to come to themselves. They're going to remember who they are.
And that's exactly. And so it tells you that very clearly, the Apocrypha being a part of the Bible. It was the buffer in between the New Testament and the Old Testament, which the New Testament is just the testament of the disciples teaching the prophets, which they were. All right. When you understand regeneration, reincarnation. All right. They were all, from the Lord on down, were all saying, as it is written. All right. The Lord was teaching from the scrolls, from Isaiah. And Paul was constantly quoting the prophets. They all were. All right. So the book is in its entirety. So, and it's all about the rise, the fall, and then the rise again of the Hebrew Israelites. All right. And the establishment of the kingdom of heaven here on earth, as the Lord's Prayer says, on earth as it is in heaven, with the Hebrew Israelites being the judges of the whole world forever and ever and ever. All right. Because the laws that they could not keep are going to be put in the inward parts, and they will keep them perfectly. Therefore, we will never fall again. And the downfall and the exposure of Esau Edom, the so-called white man who has been lying and covering up and changing history, changing the meaning of words to hide himself. And he can no longer do it, because with this modern age and modern technology, all right, internet being a part of that, which is prophesied in the Bible in the Psalms, the 19th chapter and other places, he is exposed. He's outed.
And they're going to start coming back to Yah and his commands. And when they do,
Yah is a shorthand version of Yahweh. All right.
Is when the second Exodus takes place and Jesus's return happens. So
the second Exodus, the Lord comes to punish all those who laid their hands on his people. So how you think that there's going to be the other, and it says what nation? All nations under the sun took a part in the destruction of the Hebrew Israelites, because even the nations who physically didn't put their hands on us, none of them opened their mouths to defend us, knowing who we were and watching what was being done to us, and no one spoke up for us. Now you got people speaking up now that they see the end is near and the prophecy's coming to pass. Okay?
it was a big, so I accepted that Jesus was black based on the Bible itself. And a little more about my story. I went to a fair, and recently after discovering this, and there was some IUIC gentleman there in the purple and gold, and I almost had an opportunity to go up to him and say, I believe Jesus is black too. I didn't get the chance to speak to them, but I got home and I just looked up on YouTube, gold and purple, black Hebrews, and found somebody. I got his number. I called him, and because I wanted to fellowship with a Hebrew Israelite, and that was when I learned about the camp doctrine of white people can't be saved.
It's not the camp doctrine. It's the doctrine in the Bible. The Edomites are so-called white people, and they cannot be saved. That will go against what the Bible says. There are many scriptures that you tell you of their end, and the number one is the book of Obadiah. All right, and then you get to Revelations. The Revelation of the 13th chapter tells you that they have to those who took us into captivity shall go into captivity. Those that killed us by the sword must be killed by the sword. These are the words of the Lord, roughly paraphrased. All right, Revelation 18:6 says they must get double, which lines up which precepts perfectly to Obadiah, which is why we say 1,000 years. They get 1,000 years of hardcore slavery, and at the end of it, they get annihilated off the face of the earth. That is the judgment. It tells you in the Zondervan Dictionary Bible that Edom is the only nation that has no chance of salvation. So what he went and did was when found some Israelites that told him that the Gentiles can make it too. Using scripture speaking about Gentiles making it, but not acknowledging that those Gentiles are the Hebrew Israelite foreigners. All right, so I'm going to go, as a matter of fact, let's go to Maccabees real quick. We'll get a precept in the book of Maccabees. This is 2 Maccabees. 6 and 4, is it? Yeah, 6 and 4. And it reads, "For the temple was filled with riot and reveling by Gentiles." No, that's not it. Six and 6. All right. "Neither was it lawful," well, I could have kept reading down to 6, but it says, "Neither was it lawful for a man to keep the Sabbath days of ancient fast, or to profess himself at all to be a Judean, to be an Israelite." So we were Hellenized. All right. Verse 5, "The altar was also filled with profane things which the law forbiddeth." So they took over. All right. They came in with mischief and they took over, and they wrote these decrees that we can no longer cleave on to our heritage. So this is how many of the Israelites became Hellenized, became Greeks. That's why so many of them, when you read in the Apocrypha and when you get to the New Testament, had Greek names. 400 years of Hellenization. But by blood, by race, all right, they were still Israelites. Now we're going to get the accounts in the book of Acts. All right. I'm going to read from the, is this the NLT or the yeah, this is the NLT. I'm going to read Acts 9 and 29. Let's start there. Oh, I'm in Acts 13 and 1. Let's start there. I just opened up to it. It says, "Barnabas and Saul are commissioned among the prophets and teachers of the church at Antioch, Syria." This not only proves that the disciples, that the Israelites were so-called black, but it also proves their presence. So when you watch these modern movies, when they're now starting to show you that so-called melanated people were also in Rome. They were in the Roman army. They were in the Senate. They were involved in everything, in the marketplaces. They were mainly they were the gladiators. All right, for the most part, same as you see who fills up the basketball, football arenas today. Okay. Acts 13:1. Among the prophets and the teachers and of the church of Antioch of Syria were Barnabas and Simeon, called the black man. Enough said. Can't get around this truth. This is Acts 6:1, and it says, but as the believers rapidly multiplied, there were rumblings of discontent that the Greek-speaking believers complained about the Hebrew-speaking believers, saying that their widows were being discriminated against in the daily distribution of food. I already explained to you that the believers here are talking about the Hellenists, and I'm going to prove that. All right. And they were having issues with the Hebrew-speaking believers because the Hebrews, all right, that knew that they were Hebrews, that followed the law, statutes, commandments, had a disdain for the ones who were Hellenists or spoke the Greek. As simple as that. Because when you look that word up in the Bible, because they wrote in the King James Grecian, when you look up that word Grecian, it's G1671, and it's from G1672, and it's Hellenist, and it's simply a Greek-speaking Jew. Let's go to another precept to back that up, all right, or Judean. This is Acts 9 and 29. I started at verse 8. It says, Saul with all the apostles and went all around Jerusalem with them, preaching boldly in the name of the Lord. All right. He debated with some of the Greek-speaking Judeans, or Greek-speaking Jews, but they tried to murder him. Once again, he was debating with the Hellenist. All right. Because some of the Hellenists wanted to stay Greek, and then probably the majority of them, but you had a big portion of them who were trying to cleave back on to their Israelite heritage. All right, let's get one more scripture and wrap this up. This is also in the NLT, John 7 and 35. And now that we have that understanding of the Greek-speaking believers and the Hebrew-speaking believers, were all the Grecians, were all the Hellenists, were all Israelites, Hebrews. This is John 7:35. The Jewish leaders were puzzled by the statement and were were where he is planning to go. They asked, is he thinking of leaving the country and going to the Jews in other lands? Maybe he will even teach the Greeks. Now we know who those Greeks are. The Greek-speaking Hebrews. All right. Call hello Yahweh Bahasham, Yahweh Shai Bahasham, Rakahak Wadash Kwam Yasharala, Abba Baba.